So welcome everyone. I'm Mary Beth. I'm the program coordinator, and this is Andrea Tarr, the program director. We're interchangeable, right, Andrea?
Yes, we are.
So during the presentation and the workshop that Andrea is doing for us, you can put in the chat feature if you want a question that I can ask along the way. Or I guess, Andrea, if you want someone to shout out, I just don't know how you know.
Okay, so I'm going to do some demonstrating. Obviously, we're only together for an hour, and this is no knead bread. It has to sit for 18 to 24 hours. You're not going to be here tomorrow, but I have a lot of things to show you and a lot of ingredients to talk about. If you have a question, yeah, you can. I won't be able to see anybody's hand up, but a good idea is to write it in the chat for Mary Beth. You can ask me whatever you want. Hopefully I'll even know some of the answers. And after I kind of finish up a little demo, we can just talk in general about bread. And you can ask me whatever you need to. All right. So you want me to get started?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, so welcome to my kitchen. I don't usually have this many people in my kitchen. It's a little scary, actually. But all right, we are going to demonstrate two different no knead bread recipes, and I sent you the recipes, and I want to go over some of the ingredients because there's a couple of things to talk about here. So at the top of the page it says basic bread recipe, 5 cups of flour, the yeast, the salt, and the water. Well, I just want to talk a little bit about the flour because you have a couple of different ways to go. There's it's not right or wrong. It's whatever you want it to be. So I already have 5 cups of flour in here. I didn't think I had to show you that. 5 cups of flour. So you can do this whole recipe and use all-purpose flour if you want to. You can use bread flour if you want to. Here's what I do. I take 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and I am using 2 cups of white whole wheat bread. White whole wheat flour. Now, a lot of people may not be familiar with white whole wheat flour. This I got at Wegmans. King Arthur sells it as well. You don't find it everywhere. So, obviously we know what whole wheat flour is, and it tends to be dark, and it can make your bread on the tougher side. I'm not a fan of whole wheat, but white whole wheat, first of all, it's lighter in color, and it's milder in flavor, and it still has all the same nutritional value as whole wheat because it is whole wheat, but it is just a lighter color and it doesn't give such a dense texture. So that's what I chose to do. 3 cups of all-purpose, 2 cups of white whole wheat. All right. I just wanted you to see that. So, all right. So I have my 2 cups of flour in here, and I'm wearing a flour colored shirt because I'm sure I'm going to be wearing some of it. All right. So the next thing we have to do is we have to add yeast and we have to add salt. All right, a word about yeast. Personally, I'm a fan of instant yeast. I use SAF. I'm not into the proofing of the yeast or any of that. I'll tell you something else. I keep my yeast, I buy it in a pound size because I bake a lot, and I keep it in my freezer because when you freeze yeast, yeast is a living organism. When you freeze it, it kind of puts it in suspended animation, and it's going to last you a very long time, probably years and years. If you just leave it out on your pantry or out and about, it's going to be subject to hot and cold and hot and cold, may not last as long. So I go with instant yeast and I use SAF. So I'm going to put some yeast right here. And then we need a teaspoon and a half of salt. So what I do is I just take my teaspoon, not my tablespoon, and I just do like a big heaping teaspoon. I'm using kosher salt. That's what I always use. You know that you never put the salt on top of the yeast because that is very bad for the yeast. So I've got my salt and my yeast in 2 different spots to make it easy. And now I'm just going to whisk it, give it a little, whisk it around. Okay, so now this particular one that I'm doing now is the everything bagel bread. And that's like my family favorite. So what I use, I buy this at Costco. This is by Old Thompson, the everything bagel seasoning. I've tried so many of them. This one is my favorite. I use quite a bit of it. So I think I wrote in here you can use anywhere from, I don't know, what did I say, a quarter to a half a cup? Because you know what? It's really to your taste. So I'm going to take some everything bagel seasoning. And you know what? I'm using a third of a cup. If you want to use less, use less. If you want to use more, use more. Remember, a recipe, it's a guideline. It's not carved in stone. And if you totally adhere to recipes your whole life, you know, you'll never advance your culinary skills. So a recipe is a guideline. Okay, so now that's the everything bagel seasoning. And again, I'm going to whisk it around, get it incorporated. All right, so now we have to add water. Okay, so I have my 2 cups of room temperature water. Everything else is in here. So what I do, let me get a wooden spoon. What I do is I'm going to add about 3/4 of the water, not the whole thing, because, you know, once you add it, clearly you can't remove it. So the idea is to get your dough into a nice incorporated mixture. And if you add 3/4 of a cup and you need more, you'll add a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead, add about 3/4 of it. I'm stirring it, you know, trying to show you the
We
kind.
can see it.
Stirring it with my wooden spoon. And of course, right now, yes, it's definitely dry. So I probably need more. Not probably, I definitely need more. All right, so what I'm going to do, okay, this is the part where it gets messy. If you're a bread maker, you know that. So don't judge me, but I am not, I'm putting a glove on.
It's COVID times.
Well, also I have
I
jewelry.
know.
I don't need it all under my nails. What can I say?
Andrea, can you answer one question? Why can't you put the salt on top of the yeast?
Because salt will deactivate or possibly kill your yeast. Remember, yeast is a living organism, and it will react very unfavorably to being covered with salt. So put the salt in one place and the yeast in the other, and then mix them up. Okay, so now I'm going to add a little more water, and actually not with the spatula. That's why I put the glove on. Going to get in there with your hands, and you're going to just, you know, get the feel of the dough. And this is, the idea is that all the dough should be nicely hydrated, and nothing should be, no dry dough in the bottom of the bowl. So I can see that I still need a little bit more, and I only have a little bit more, so I'm just going to add the rest of it. So that's my 2 cups of water. On any given day when I make bread, sometimes I even need a little bit more water. But this is looking pretty good. Let me finish it up.
Andrea, question, would you mix that in your KitchenAid or do you recommend doing it by hand?
The whole point of no knead dough is you don't have to do that. Can you? Of course. But no knead dough, I'm really not kneading it. I'm just mixing it. Yes, of course I could do this in my KitchenAid, but I'm not going to bother. All right, you know what? I think I actually still need a little bit more water because you can see there's still a lot of dry dough on the bottom. So let me just get a little bit of tap water. Okay. I hope we'll do it. Yeah, the whole idea behind no knead dough is that you can just mix it up in a bowl and you're going to let it sit for something like 18 to 24 hours and come back the next day. And you didn't really have to do much of anything. I use my mixer when I'm using dough that has to be, that has to be kneaded. And I don't want to, I'm not really much of a hand kneader. It's not my thing. All right, I'm scraping the sides of the bowl. And a little bit more. Okay. So this is now, takes a little effort. And I will tell you something. Normally what I do, because I'm short, I put this actually in my sink and it gives me a little more leverage to do this. But I wanted to be able to show this on camera. So you know what? I'm good with this. This is nice. So what I'm going to do is take off my glove. And then we cover this with some cling wrap. And you want to put it in a nice draft-free area, somewhere that's warm. A lot of times I put it in my microwave, or I just put it, of course my microwave is not turned on, or I put it in my oven, just because those are two good places. And then I will put a note on the door, because otherwise I might forget that I have bread in there. Okay, so that's done. No need, everything bagel seasoning bread. Okay, now put that over here. Now I'm going to show you cinnamon raisin. There's so many different variations on this. You can do it any way you want. I'm going to show you how I do it. Okay, so again, I'm mixing up my 5 cups of flour, 3 cups of all-purpose, 2 cups of white whole wheat. And I've experimented with this for a while now. I used to use like almost a 50-50 ratio of white whole wheat and all-purpose. But I felt the more whole wheat you put in there, the denser your bread is, and I just wasn't liking the texture of it. But you can experiment and you can decide for yourself exactly what you like. All right, so here, cinnamon raisin. So first thing I'm going to do, we always have to start with our yeast. Let me get this in here. Half a teaspoon, putting it on the side. And then I'm going to go to my salt, and I want a teaspoon and a half of kosher salt. I use, by the way, Diamond Crystal kosher salt. I don't use Morton. And the reason, because Morton salt, because of the way the salt is formulated, Morton is saltier than Diamond Crystal. And that's important to know. So if you need a tablespoon or a teaspoon of salt and you use one over the other, you may get different results. Maybe not be so happy about it. All right, so now, again, I'm going to whisk my salt, my yeast, and then combine everything. The white whole wheat flour is actually a little bit darker in color. It's not like super white like the all-purpose flour. So just visually, I don't know if you could really tell, but visually, this is a little more of a beige color, not white. All right, so this is mixed up. And now I'm going to add cinnamon. Now, here again, I like cinnamon. Maybe you like more, maybe you like less. Maybe you don't even want to add cinnamon. So I'm going to add a very heaping tablespoon. Very. Because I like it. You could add more or less. It's not going to change anything about this recipe. You could do this instead of doing cinnamon raisin. You could do, sometimes I put walnuts in here. You could do cranberry pecan. You could do cranberry walnut. Don't be afraid to switch it up. It's your bread. All right, so I mixed in the cinnamon, and it definitely has a very cinnamony smell in here now, which is a good thing. All right, so now raisins. So I would say about a cup of raisins. This is going to make a lot of bread. You want more raisins, less raisins? I'm going to do like a very big handful. like so. This recipe is very forgiving, so you don't have to worry too much. And we'll mix this up again. Get in here and mix up the raisins. Okay, now the next thing is we have honey in this recipe. So I have my 2 cups of water right here, room temperature, and I have roughly, and I mean roughly because I'm not measuring this, about 1/4 cup of honey left here, and I saved it because I knew I was going to use it for this. I'm going to add the honey directly into the water just because it's going to be easier for me to deal with. So let's get this honey out of here. You know what, why don't we just... Okay, I'm just squeezing in the honey. I'm not going to be too particular about the measurements because it's not going to make a difference. Okay, that's just about it. Okay. I mean, don't you like things that you don't have to be so precise about? I do. So I'm mixing the honey up in the water. Now, I know from experience that this is definitely going to take all of my liquid. So I'm mixing it up. I'm not going to say the honey is dissolved, but it's not like a big glob on the bottom. So now I'm just going to pour in the honey. All right, like so. And let me get a clean wooden spoon. And I'm going to stir this up. And then in a moment, actually the minute I put in the liquid and the honey, my instant yeast begins to bubble. And we take that as a very good sign. So let me clean this off. All right, and get a new glove, because that's how I roll. It's glove optional, but I think people who get to have this are going to be happy to know that I used a glove. So my neighbors know they're going to get a big bread delivery. So we're just, again, we're just mixing this up thoroughly. This bread has a slightly different feel. Maybe it's the cinnamon. Of course, there's raisins in here. Like I said, you could have, sometimes when I make this, I put walnuts in here as well. It's whatever you want. And you know what? For some reason, maybe it's the humidity or whatever it is in the air, but I feel like I still need a little bit more water. It's a very shaggy dough. So you know what? Let's go ahead and get a little more water.
Andrea, while you're getting your water, we have a question about freezing the bread after you baked it. You can freeze the bread.
You absolutely can freeze the bread. Remember, this is homemade bread. There's no preservatives whatsoever. I make this bread, I slice it, and I freeze it. That's how I store it.
You slice it before you freeze it.
I slice it before I freeze it. Yes, you definitely can freeze this bread. I would say you should, because unless you're eating it pretty much immediately.
Yeah. And do you wrap it in saran, Andrea, and then put it in a Ziploc bag?
No, I slice it up.
Right.
And then I just put everything in a Ziploc bag.
Okay.
And it goes right in my freezer.
Okay.
And then I take out, if I want a slice of bread, I take out a slice of bread. Okay, so this is incorporating very nicely. All right, you can see I'm putting a little oomph into it. Almost done.
Andrea, have you ever used maple syrup instead of honey?
No, but I think that would be delicious. So instead of 1/4 cup of honey, try 1/4 cup of maple syrup. That sounds great, actually.
That was Patrice's question. So Patrice, when you try it with the maple syrup, let us know.
I need a little bit more water. Where's my, yeah, I think that sounds delicious. You know, the recipe is a guideline. That's all it is.
Yeah. Can you substitute almond flour for all-purpose flour?
I don't know the answer to that because I have never done that for bread. I really don't know. Does anybody know the answer? I'm honestly not sure if you would get the same results.
Okay. And just so everyone knows, this was sent as an attachment. The recipes were in the email with the Zoom link. So the list of ingredients are there.
So this is nice and hydrated and mixed together. So same thing. I'm going to cover this up and then I think, you know, the one thing that some people object to with no knead bread is you aren't going to come home from work at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock and have it ready for dinner. So I will typically do this either in the evening or in the late part of the afternoon, knowing I'm going to bake it tomorrow. Right. So you do have a little bit of planning to do. All right, wrapping this with saran. All right, so my two breads are mixed, and obviously I will be baking them tomorrow. So here's what happens next. Of course, I have one ready for us. This is just like on TV, right?
The magic of television.
Right. So this is Everything Bagel. And I put this in my 1 glass bowl so you could see it. So this rose quite a bit. And it's very, I guess they use, you know, bubbly. I see a lot of bubbles. All of the Everything Bagel seasoning, which of course is dry, is all nicely hydrated here. And it smells awesome. Okay, so now the next step. Let me get this out of my way. All right, so to prepare this for baking, what we're going to do is, let me get my board. And I need a little bit of flour. Put a little flour here. Now we're really not going to knead this dough, but you'll see what we are going to do. Okay. It's really not a big deal. So just use my bowl scraper here to get the dough out. And I see all these really beautiful gluten strands, which is exactly what you're supposed to see. Okay, so it's not super sticky. It's a little bit tacky. So what we're going to do, I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. I'm going to take my bench scraper. Got to have a bench scraper. And I'm just going to kind of fold it onto itself a few times. Flatten it out a little bit. Fold it like so. And then, got the flour here. I'm going to kind of pinch this together, and I'm turning it, and I'm forming a nice ball. I can put a little more flour on the top. Okay. There you go. Beautiful. Now this is I could, if I wanted to, this is going to make one large, and I do mean large, ball of dough. But if I wanted to, I could cut it in half, and I could wind up making baguettes out of it, 2 baguettes, and I'll show you some samples of that. But what I'm going to do with this right now, I need to let this sit before I can bake it. I need to let this sit for about 40-45 minutes. And I have a glass bowl, and I put a piece of parchment paper in here to make it easy to transfer. And I'm just gonna plop that down like so. I'm gonna take a lint-free towel, just cover this up, and I'm gonna just put it over here. Now, in 45 minutes or so, let me get rid of this flour so I'm not wearing it. So in about 45 minutes, it'll be ready for the oven. And I bake this at 425. Now, some recipes called for 450. I found in my oven that was just too hot. So I brought it back down to 425. So it's baking in my oven for 425, and I'm going to use, I want to show you. This is my Dutch oven that I use specifically for baking bread. So the idea is, while this is proofing for about 45 minutes, I'm going to turn on the oven, 425, and I'm going to take this whole thing, top and bottom, put it on in the center rack of my oven and let it get screaming hot. Screaming hot. You got to be super careful. So in 45 minutes, when my timer goes off, I will take my bread with a very sharp knife, not my finger. Let me get a knife to show you. This is what I use. And I will score my bread about going down about a half an inch. I'll make an X, something like that. There's a reason you do this. I always wondered, actually, before I bake bread. If you don't do this to the bread, what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of surface tension and it's going to crack. But if you create an X or slits or whatever pattern, you are releasing the surface tension, and that's how you're going to get a nice design on your bread. All right, then after I do that, obviously I'm using hot pads because this is hot. I just took it out of the oven. Take it like so. Put it right in here. I use the parchment because it's easy for me to transfer the bread in and out. Otherwise, you'd have to reach into something that was crazy hot. Okay, so the bread is going to cook 30 minutes. Oh, very interesting. Let me share something else with you. Squirt bottle filled with clean water. Before I put my bread in the oven, I am going to squirt it a little bit, not drench it, but give it a few shots with the mist. And you do that because it helps create steam. And that's the whole idea of a Dutch oven. You're creating steam. All right, so now you always need more room, right? Okay. Let me just get this out of the way.
Andrea, while you're just tidying up, any egg wash to brown the top?
You don't have to. The whole idea of the Dutch oven and squirting some extra water on there, you're going to get a nice brown top. Now, here's what you do. It's in the oven covered for 30 minutes. 30 minutes, you're going to uncover it. It's not going to be totally brown yet. So you're going to leave it in your Dutch oven uncovered for anywhere from like 12 to 20 minutes. And the reason for the variation is how brown do you want your crust to be? For me, it's anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes. That's brown enough for me. But you will have to decide. And then you take it out and lifting it out extremely carefully. And the thing is, when you cool bread, you really want to cool it on a wire rack, not on a flat surface, because you want everything to cool, and you don't want to create extra steam or any kind of moisture on the bottom. Might get a soggy bottom. Nobody wants that. When your bread is done, and if you thump the bottom, it should have a nice hollow sound to it. I mean, you will really hear the hollow sound.
Good.
Okay, now let me take a drink.
All
Any
right.
questions?
Yes, we have one more. If you don't have a Dutch oven, can you use a cookie sheet?
Yes, you can use a cookie sheet, and I'm going to show you what you can do. Okay, so sometimes I don't want it to be, wait, you know what? I'm sorry for having this here, but I have no place to put it. Sometimes I don't want to make, the round ball. I want to make baguettes. And these I bought on Amazon. And what I do is, I'll cut the dough in half. One loaf will give me 2 big baguettes. And Mary Beth, you have a
Yes.
diagram, not a diagram. I want
Yeah.
to show you what I do.
All right. Give me a sec. I'll pull it up.
So the thing is, when you put this in the oven, I put these on a cookie sheet. Go to the very last, okay,
This
they're
one?
on a cookie sheet. I spray them with non-stick spray because sometimes they do stick, and that's problematic. All right, so they're on the cookie sheet. They're going to go like in the top third of my oven. So if you're using a cookie sheet. Now, Mary Beth, that last slide that shows my oven. Yes, okay.
Did I pass it?
Yeah, the oven, the actual.
There we go.
All right, here's what you do. The Dutch oven creates steam, but how do you emulate that in your oven? So I have an old cast iron pan. You can see it's in the bottom of the oven, and you can use anything that can manage a super high heat. I just leave that in there. All right, so I let my oven preheat to 425, and then I open the oven door and I take 2 cups of warm or hot water, whatever you want, very carefully. I pour it right into that cast iron skillet and I immediately shut the door. Now that's going to create a lot of steam in your oven, and that's going to be great for your bread to get a really nice crust. By the way, you can also do the same thing. Take your little spritzer bottle and spray the top of your bread, again, because you want to encourage that terrific crust. And this you would cook open like this. You'd probably cook it for about 30, 35 minutes. You have to check it. Every oven, is different. Okay, thanks, Mary Beth, for that.
Andrea, I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you say that the baguette holder should go into the oven just like that cast iron pot?
No, these I don't put in. Okay, so
Preheat.
I want to make baguettes, so I cut the dough in half, and instead of making that ball, I'll roll each half out into a long log, and I'll put one on each side here.
Okay.
Cover it with a towel, proof it the exact same way. And I always put this on a cookie sheet because otherwise it'll be like impossible to transfer.
Right.
So the oven is heating. That cast iron skillet's on the bottom. When it's time to put this in the oven, again, I slash the baguettes with my very sharp knife, making a couple of slashes. And then this will go towards the top of the oven,
Right.
however your oven is situated. Let it cook about 30, 35 minutes. Same idea. So the Dutch oven encourages steam, but you can use anything. You can cook your bread in anything. But to encourage steam, you can just use that frying pan method.
Gotcha.
At the bottom. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I also want to show you, I also have one of these. This is just another one. This lets me make 4 baguettes, 4 really thin ones. So with 5 cups of flour, that's a pretty big, well, you'll see in a moment, I'm going to show you. So I can cut my dough into 4 pieces, and I can get 4 nice baguettes out of that. Okay, so now let me show you. Let me show you what some of this looks like.
If only we could have a taste right now.
I wish I could share it.
That looks so good.
It does.
It smells good too, I got to tell you. All right, so here's a baguette.
Beautiful.
And
my
Mary Beth, I gave you nice close-ups, so if people want to see. But you can see that I've got 2 big slashes in here that I did. It even takes on like a kind of a honeycomb on the bottom, mimicking the shape, the texture of the baguette pan.
Yeah.
These are, my baguette pan is 16 inches long, so this is pretty big. Here is the cinnamon raisin baguette. And seriously, that's,
Give it a knock on it. Let's hear it.
hear it?
Yep.
This weighs about 2.5 pounds. It's a lot of bread. And then of course, here's the everything bagel seasoning. I mean, honestly, I think they're beautiful. They taste delicious. And I don't think of it as really that much effort, more so a little bit of planning ahead. Now, when you are making bread that's this spectacular, you absolutely have to have a spectacular bread knife, I think. So let's just cut this, for example.
Oh, if only we were in person right now.
It's got a beautiful crumb to it. I mean, it smells incredible. Let me cut this one. And you can see the variation in the color. And a lot of this is, of course, due to the fact the cinnamon. The cinnamon made a big difference, the cinnamon and the honey. So this is not exactly like white bread. It is more dense and has what I would say like a lot more body to it. And definitely because it's using white whole wheat, we've bumped up the nutritional value of the bread. Ah, that's a lot of bread, right? So I will slice all of the bread, and this is a good knife. It lets me make fairly thin slices, and then I pack it in Ziploc baggies. I put it in my freezer, and it stays there for quite some time.
Beautiful.
Mary Beth, will you just show those other photos?
Yes, I will.
Please.
Let me see. So this is the close-up of your round.
So you can see a lot of the raisins are poking out. And you can see I have 2 Dutch ovens. I have the blue one also. So sometimes I am making two of the round boules. So I'll do one in each Dutch oven, and I can put them both in the oven at the same time. And they are pretty spectacular. There they are cooling on the rack. I love those baguette pans. Again, inexpensive on Amazon. You can see how these baguettes really fill out the pan.
They're just beautiful.
Thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
they really they come out just wonderful.
Mm.
Oh.
And I wanted you to see up close the crumb of the bread. There's a lot of wonderful holes in it. You can
Is
see
that the everything one?
seasoning in there.
Andrea, this is the everything seasoning, right?
That's the everything bagel seasoning.
And that's
And
the
there is, of course, cinnamon raisin. Now, I am pretty aggressive with the cinnamon because I like it. And of course, that definitely darkens it.
Mm.
It's especially awesome if you add some nuts to it. But I do, you know, it's funny. I find a lot of people are nut adverse. So when I do it right now, if I don't know for sure, I make it without nuts because too many people have issues with nuts.
Andrea, are you actually using the light and dark raisins in this?
No, I just buy dark raisins.
Okay.
Again, you can use dark raisins. You can use light raisins. A great combination is cranberry walnut or cranberry pecan. You know, the craisins.
Oh,
That's another terrific combination for the bread.
that's good for the holidays.
Yeah, and it looks beautiful. It really does. Again, if you're not happy with the idea of using the whole wheat, just stick with the everything. I mean, the all-purpose flour. Your bread will not be quite as dense. It'll have a different look to it. Still delicious, of course.
Beautiful. Andrea, would you like me to have a gallery view and see if anyone has any questions?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
So everyone is muted, so you can
Yeah,
unmute
yeah.
yourself.
You can ask.
I'm trying to remove your spotlight. We
I have a question.
all come together. Okay.
The question is, if you were to use regular flour, would there be a difference between all-purpose flour or bread flour?
Okay, so you can use either one. So bread flour has a higher protein content, and it does give you maybe a chewier bread, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with just using 100% all-purpose flour. You're going to get a great result.
Okay. And the other question, if you were going to make the cranberry nut bread, would you use cinnamon also?
You could if you like cinnamon. See, that's where I say you have to take the basic recipe and make
Right.
it your own.
Right.
I get some people that say to me, oh, you put cinnamon in that? Yes, I did. So
Marie, go ahead. Marie has a question.
I wondered, did you say you mix the baguettes with water or not?
yes, I do. Yes,
Okay.
I do. If I'm not cooking the bread, if I'm not baking the bread in a Dutch oven, or even if I am, I will mist everything. Yes.
Okay.
Again, misting, not drenching.
And I have another question, Andrea. If you're using the dried cranberries, do you have to put them in water to plump them first or no?
You know, you could, but here's the thing. You're putting them in this hydrated dough, and they're going to sit in the dough for what, 12 to 18 hours?
Yeah, they might get
Just like the raisins, they
Right.
are going to get somewhat plumped up.
I see. Thank you.
Yep. But you know what someone told me they did? They used raisins and they soaked the raisins in some sort of a liqueur, and then they put it in there. I mean, see, there's lots of things you can do here, guys.
Do we have any other questions?
She tried, Andrea, have you tried nuts or chocolate chips in the breads?
I have never tried chocolate chips because personally, that doesn't appeal to me. That's just me.
Butterscotch chips.
But you could definitely do like a chocolate chip bread. You know what else you could do? You could do an olive bread.
Mm.
So instead of putting, say, everything seasoning, although personally, I think you could use everything seasoning on everything.
Everything.
You could use any kind of olive you wanted, roughly chop them, a cup of olives, more if you like more. The Kalamata
Tasty.
olives that are oil cured, stick those in your bread. Wow, I think you'll have great bread on that.
Go ahead, Patrice.
Have you ever done a cheese, any kind of cheese bread?
Yes, I do. I told Mary I do a I add it's very different than this, but it has Parmesan cheese, and I do herbs and fresh garlic right in the dough.
But not with this dough. You wouldn't do it with
I
any
haven't done it with this dough, although you know what? There's no reason not to.
Yeah,
I absolutely could.
yeah.
I mean, I have to get out of the kitchen at some point, you know?
Andrea, could you make it as a stuffed bread, like roll sausage or something in it?
Yeah, this bread might be a little dense to work with, but the answer is, of course you can.
Okay.
You can flatten it out into a big rectangle, put in whatever you might want to put in, and kind of roll it up like a jelly roll. And then I would use my my baguette pans, and that sounds pretty fabulous. Make bread, send me pictures.
Is there a difference in the cooking time between the baguettes and the round breads?
No.
No, they're all, what was the amount of time?
Half an
Okay,
hour.
so 30 minutes. If you're using a Dutch oven, it's 30 minutes covered and about 12 to 15 minutes uncovered. And if I'm just doing the baguettes, they're also in the top part of my oven, and the baguettes are going to go for like 30 to 35 minutes.
going back to talking about the baguettes, and if you don't have those heavy duty pans for water, you could use anything. It's only gonna be, it's gonna evaporate. The water, I assume,
Yes,
is gonna,
yes, it
so
does.
you want to
All right,
make
so
sure it's got a high,
I just happen to have that cast iron,
right,
but anything that can withstand, anything that can go in your oven that can withstand a
Right.
high heat, of course.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Did everybody get the recipe?
Yes.
Except for Joan. I'm gonna resend it to you, Joan.
I'll have to look. I have more than one.
Okay.
So what do you think? Does it look like something you'd like to try?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Remember though, this is not the kind of bread that you leave out on the counter for days. You got to either eat it, give it away, or
Freeze
slice it and refrigerate it.
Right.
And I will be doing a lot of slicing later.
They're beautiful. I mean, how much does a loaf of bread like that go for at a bakery?
This weighs 2.5 pounds. I don't even know if I don't think the loaves that I buy are this big. So let me tell you that since I started baking bread, which is going on 2 years now, and I mean this absolutely, I have not bought bread.
You don't need to.
I just haven't bought bread.
No.
Use that bread for sandwiches? Which,
Sure, why not? Absolutely.
Well, and the benefit too of making your own bread is you're able to control the amount of salt, right? If you're watching your salt intake.
This has the everything seasoning bread. I mean, all bread needs a certain amount of salt because that's the science behind it. But you know what? There's no sugar in here. There's no preservatives. And depending on how you might slice it, you can make it into great sandwich bread. Unless you're just somebody who's likes Wonder Bread, which I know you're not because you're here.
How large is that cast iron pot you've got there?
That one is an 8-inch cast iron skillet.
No, the pot that you're baking the round bread in. How big is that?
You're talking about this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Lodge, and I want to say that that's a 4-quart Dutch oven.
4 quart.
And then my big one is like 6 quarts.
And which one do you make? How big a bread do you make in the 4 quart and in the 6 quart? The same?
Yeah.
The same one.
Plenty
Okay.
of room.
Okay. So you don't need a 6 quart. A 4 quart is.
Yeah, there's plenty of room. And here's the other thing: if you had it to, large, it's obviously only going to fill. It's going to maybe be a little bit higher. So no worries on that. Yeah, it's all going to work.
When you take the frozen bread out of the freezer, do you toast it or what do you do with it? Toast it?
I take it out of the freezer. Like I know that I want toast in the morning. In the morning, I'll take out a piece of bread or so. I might nuke it for 10 seconds to take off the hard frost, and then I toast it.
where did you obtain the baguette pans? I've never seen those before. Where did they come from?
Amazon.
Oh, Amazon. Okay, that explains it.
Just go to Amazon and type in baguette pans. These are made by Chicago Metallic. They were not expensive. I mean, I love them. Now, having said that, do you need these? Of course not.
No.
You could just take your sheet pan, form the loaf, put it on some parchment paper, and just put it in there. Of course, you don't need this. But you know what? I must have been feeling fancy. So I have it. But of course, you don't need it. But you know what you need? You need a good knife. You need a good bread knife. Otherwise, you know what? You rip the shreds out of your bread. You want to have a good bread knife.
Where did you get that? Yeah. Where did you get that one?
Amazon.
Okay.
Apparently, this is made by Mercer, Mercer.
Andrea, I have a Corning, I don't know if it's a Dutch oven. It looks like a Dutch oven. It's pretty deep and it has a cover, Corningware. Would that be considered a Dutch oven?
Yeah, if it has a cover, that's what
Yeah,
makes
okay.
it a Dutch oven. Yeah.
Yeah, I have Farberware. Is that it? Can I use my 8-quart, my Dutch oven size?
That's stainless steel.
Yeah,
It's,
Can't
you
put that
know,
in the oven.
it's not exactly the same because
Yeah.
it's not as heavy duty as this. I don't know how well it'll produce the
In
steam.
the
Right.
heat.
You know
Right.
what I would say though? Try it. All you're going to be out is some flour, salt, and yeast.
I do have a cast iron skillet. I could probably use that and then just put the water underneath in a pan or something.
Yes, you
right?
could.
Oh, it's working.
Yes, you could. Yeah. You know, you can be creative. You don't have to buy any fancy equipment to do this. You know, even, you know, I just,
I don't like putting that in the oven.
but you can make this, you don't have to do this on a Dutch oven either. You can just make the ball and put it on a sheet pan. Some people put a little bit underneath it, a little bit of cornmeal or a
Yeah.
little bit of semolina flour.
Do that when I make my pizza dough. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then you get like a little layer of like crunchy on the bottom. So you can do that too. You know, there's so many variations. And if you were to the recipes that I gave you, I mean, they're very basic. You could find them everywhere.
Right.
A lot of times I see recipes that only call for 3 cups of flour. And for me, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make something bigger because I don't want to keep doing it every day. And since I have a lot of friends who are always asking me for bread, so, and they know my baking schedule. So right away. But
I don't.
yeah.
As I said, I don't know your baking schedule, Andrea.
I wish that we could all have a piece of bread together.
I
I'm not even
know.
eating it because I don't want to. But honestly, it's beautiful, isn't it?
It's gorgeous.
I know that I created it, but it's so easy and it's so
Yeah.
worth it.
Nice.
Andrea, how often do you bake bread? And do you make
Oh,
both the
now you want my
baguette?
schedule. So I do bake bread probably easily every other week.
Wow.
But
How much?
I live alone, and I mean, I don't even. You know, I apologize. My phone is ringing, and I can't get to it.
Okay.
I give away most of the bread that I make to my friends and to my neighbors.
So in 2022, when we come back to scan in the basement of the mall, I expect to see samples.
I wish I could, you know, give you all samples. It's worth it.
We
I
do
think,
too.
you know,
and
it's
then we do
worth the
too.
trouble to do this.
We do too, and then you wouldn't have to slice it and freeze it.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, to me, this makes a great gift when you go to somebody's house.
Mm.
Absolutely.
That and a bottle of wine, you're all set.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Oh, no, just water. I always said if I had to go to prison, I'd be in heaven. What, bread and water? I could live on it.
What else do you really need? So I will tell you that yesterday for the first time, I baked semolina bread. And that came out fantastic. So that's a little bit of a different kind of dough also, you know, the durum wheat semolina. So I
Right.
really enjoyed working with that. So that was something very different. So
Is that the same idea? You just use the different flour?
yeah, the semolina bread, you use, I used 2 cups of all-purpose flour to 1 cup of semolina.
Nice.
And did you put sesame seeds on it?
I did.
Of course,
You
you have
almost
to.
have to.
Yeah.
Of course.
I sprayed the top of it with water
Uh-huh.
before I put it in the oven, and I sprinkled sesame seeds all over the top.
Nice.
That's my favorite bread, is the semolina
delicious.
sesame.
Absolutely delicious. I'll never
Yeah.
buy that again either.
Yeah, that's my favorite. They sell semolina? I don't even remember seeing semolina flour.
You know what? Yeah, semolina flour. I buy it at Wegmans, and it
Yeah.
only comes in a small
right.
Pound container. They don't sell it like all-purpose
Yeah.
flour. It's more expensive too.
Oops.
You know, it's just, I guess because once the bread making bug, I haven't stopped yet, obviously.
I've always been afraid of the yeast. I only make a Christmas stollen at on the
Right.
holidays, but I'd
Oh,
like to
wonderful.
try it. These look so good. I think I'd like to try them.
Well, I'll tell you something. I was always concerned about yeast. I didn't understand it. I had never done anything with yeast. Or if I did, I had bad luck with it. Or I had some packets of yeast on my pantry shelf here for like years and years, and they were expired. So
Yeah.
I read a lot about yeast, and I decided I'm going to use instant yeast.
Mhm.
It's just the easiest way to go.
Yeah.
What did you call it? SAF?
I buy
Yep.
SAF, but there's many other brands. But here's the trick. You have to either refrigerate it or do what I do, which
Yes.
is keep it in the freezer.
Oh, I keep it in the fridge. How long do you keep it in the freezer?
Years.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
freezing it suspends it, suspended
Okay.
animation. And then when I need it, I just take what I need and put it right into the flour. And there's nothing to do. There's no extra effort.
Right.
What quantity can you buy that in, Andrea?
I buy it in 1 pound
Okay.
containers, which is
Mhm.
a lot of yeast. And I mean, I'm sure, I mean, probably didn't buy that on Amazon, but I bet you can. But in the grocery store, they sell instant
Okay.
yeast.
Okay, so I have Fleischmann's Rapid Yeast, instant yeast. The expiration date is September 2022. And they come in these little thingies, these little packages. I don't even know where,
Right,
there's the
right.
thing.
Yeah,
Right. So they're easy to keep.
that's what I have.
It says one package is 1/4 of an ounce, approximately 2¼ teaspoons. So
Right.
they're nice to keep in the closets because I'm not going to bake as much bread as Andrea is.
Now, here's the thing.
Yeah, but you have to keep it in the
if you
fridge or the
open that
freezer.
packet,
Yeah.
you have to refrigerate that after you open it.
Right, but they're individually wrapped. It doesn't say you have to simply add the dry ingredients. You don't have to refrigerate it yet, unless you're going to keep, if you open it and you're going to keep some of it. But if you only, how many you want, how much? Oh, it's only a half a teaspoon. Oh, so you could keep the rest. Yeah, you could
Right.
freeze the
Something
rest.
like that. Other recipes might call for like a teaspoon or 2
Oh.
teaspoons or a tablespoon of yeast if you're baking, you know, other kinds of things. But no knead dough is, you know, you're letting the yeast do its work slowly over time. And that's
Okay.
why we don't have to use a lot of yeast.
That's good. Yeah, I like working with yeast. I've done yeast before. I like.
Well, now I feel a lot more comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Only a half a teaspoon you're using, huh?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And some recipes only ask for 1/4 teaspoon.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm gonna go make something.
Oh, and I hope you'll send us pictures.
I don't know if I'm worried about the oven. I'm worried about the oven and the steam. Is it going to create heat and smoke or?
No.
No.
It does not create any smoke. It's creating steam, and that steam is important for your bread to help it rise and get a nice crust. But in a hot, first of all, you're only using 1.5 to 2 cups. And it's going to evaporate pretty quickly because it's a hot oven.
Right.
I mean, when my bread is done, there's nothing left in.
Right.
No, there's no smoke.
So maybe the Dutch oven is a better thing.
Well, the Dutch oven
Yeah.
contained its own steam.
Right.
That's the whole
Right.
idea. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you're concerned about that, use a Dutch oven.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? If you don't want to use the steam, guess what? You don't have to. Maybe you'll be satisfied with your results. Try it.
Well, that helps make the crust crustier. Well, that's the whole point. That's
Right.
Yes, it does.
that's what I look for in a piece of bread. That's
Yes, of course.
for a nice crust.
Slice off all the crust and eat the crust. So
Oh.
I get
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
me
get
too.
Yep.
I'm the one that fights for the end
You
piece.
too, yeah.
The end pieces on the baguettes are always the cook's treat.
Right.
So if you, when we do get together, bring us all ends.
Let me know how I can make that happen. That sounds-
Free-
A lot of mini loaves, a lot of mini loaves.
Oh, well, yeah.
There you go.
All together, it will be my pleasure to supply everyone with some bread samples.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It was very quite
Oh, my
Thank
enjoyable.
you, Andrea.
My
Learned a
pleasure.
lot. Thank you.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Really,
Mhm.
really.
So you
All
know,
right.
tomorrow I have to bake those two.
What time?
I just like the smell too. I mean, just to have that smell in my kitchen is
It's
so wonderful.
fantastic. It really is.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen, I appreciate you coming into my kitchen. I really enjoy doing this, and it's like a different experience when you bake your own
Sure.
bread.
Sure.
I've had a good time experimenting with it. And as I said earlier, don't be a slave to a recipe. It's a guideline.
Right.
Add, I think you can add olives, you can add different cheeses, you can add herbs in here, whatever strikes your fancy. Have
I was
fun.
thinking if you like a molasses, you can instead of like a honey or syrup.
Why not?
a syrup.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It'll totally change the bread.
Right. Right.
Okay.
All right, ladies, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Andrea. It was
Andrea.
Fabulous.
Pleasure.
See you tomorrow, Andrea. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much
Oh,
again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Happy baking.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.